Welcome to Economics Happy Hour. My name's Matt.
And my name is Jadrian.
It is Tuesday, June 3rd, when we are recording, to be released 2 days later, Thursday, June 5th. We don't normally do it this close. We really should be taking an opportunity to talk about the latest and greatest in the news today, although I don't know that we are. But I will ask what's new. And you just got back from C-Tree, a big
The conference on teaching and research in economics education. Yes, I did.
How was C-Tree?
Love the people of C-Tree. Don't always love C-Tree, the event. The people are, I think that's true probably for a lot of different things in life. The people make
Yeah.
it amazing. Love seeing friends, love meeting new people, love
Yeah.
getting to catch up with people I haven't gotten to catch up to. And then while I'm filling out the reimbursement to get reimbursed for going to C-Tree is when I sit back and reflect on just how fortunate I am to be at a place that pays for me to go do this because these things are so incredibly expensive. I find them really valuable. I'm making connections. I'm going
Yeah.
out. I'm doing stuff. Not everybody
Yeah.
does that. And I don't always, I sometimes look back at this receipts and I go, was this really worth it?
Yeah.
Could I have gotten the same experience just being there if I didn't have to register, if I stayed at a different hotel? So I don't know. Expensive trip, but thankfully Virginia Tech paid for it, and I'm very
Yeah.
fortunate that they did.
No, I didn't go this year. I went last year, and I would say the echo that. If I don't know that anybody who organizes C-Tree listens to us necessarily, but if you do, the opportunities to interact with other people, that part's amazing. I don't know. The sessions. Yeah, there were surprisingly few that I found valuable last year at that, and
Yeah.
so, but a lot of conferences, what I find value in is finding the people that I know or in meeting some new people,
Mhm.
going out to dinner or over a drink, chit-chatting about the various ideas, papers to work on, bouncing research ideas back and forth, learning what's new.
Right. I mean, it's the people, right? I mean, that's where I'm getting to meet my co-authors, checking on
Yeah.
papers, talk about next papers. We could do that over email, but it's just, I don't know, a lot gets done at a conference.
Yeah.
A lot of
I mean,
wheeling and dealing for
well,
future
you're in it.
papers.
It's like you're sitting and, you're at a networking session and you have a beer in hand and you're just chit-chatting and bouncing the ideas back and forth that maybe you're not thinking about, but they mention something and you're like, oh, maybe we could take this angle with it.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I think those are valuable. So what is the beverage of choice
It's
on this
already
fine
cracked
evening?
into it. Matt's
Yeah.
Matt's watching me drink, doesn't even get to talk to me about it. It's a very sunny day. I have sat out on the porch a few times this afternoon, which means I have switched over to a non-alcoholic beverage, a
Mm,
Electro Lime Circa de Cerveza from the Best Day Brewing, crafted with sea salt and lime. I'm pretty sure I got it at Target. Very good, light Mexican lager.
that looks like a good non-alcoholic beer I will have to try sometime. So last time you had an IPA and I didn't, and that's just not normal, and I had to correct that. So I have Founders Mortal Bloom Hazy IPA
A little
for
reversion to the mean is what we're doing.
yes, reverting to the mean.
Well, mine tastes delicious, so I'll talk while you are consuming that.
Sounds
Other
good.
other good things that are happening. So I just got back from C-Tree, and as soon as I get back from C-Tree, we are now planning Jet Set. So Jet Set is up on the horizon. We will spend 3 lovely days in St. Louis, Missouri. So all the stuff's coming together. We've got the beginning of sessions. So hopefully you'll
Sure.
find some sessions that you enjoy at Jet Set. We're putting together the sessions. We are finalizing activities because this is the joke I always make. We arranged Jet Set and said, "What are all the things we hate about normal conferences?" And then we don't do those things. So
Yeah.
lots of opportunities to network, interact, talk to people, meet people. So it's all coming together. Really excited.
No, that's great. I've loved the jet sets so far. I've liked the sessions there more than most, but I think even at Jet Set, it really is about the people is the value. But some of the great networking things there, that'll be fun.
Okay.
For
I
those
have
listening,
written.
if come to St. Louis.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think I have written. I shouldn't say published because one's published, one is under review. But I have 2 papers that have come out of Jet Set or that have been presented at Jet Set. So
Nice.
previous Jet Sets, I should say. I don't know that I have papers coming from the next Jets. I mean, I've got some submissions. We'll see if
Yeah.
they turn into papers. We'll see if I meet some people that I can co-author with.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. I was at I did a workshop at Michigan State, which was pretty fun. I do, we've talked about experimental auction research a little bit in the past, and this is the third year in a row I've had the opportunity to go and train a number of some masters, a lot of PhD students, and some newer assistant professors or newer PhDs on experimental and survey design. So my part is really thinking about how an experiment is run, and then that's day one, and then day two is experimental auctions, which has
Very cool.
been my area. And so that was a lot of fun, and it's fun to keep in touch with that portion of my research and career.
Let me check that I'm still right on this. Did you tell me you like escape rooms?
I love escape rooms. Yes.
There will be two escape room papers at Jet Set.
Ooh, that'll be fun. I will have to check
They will
those
be in
out.
the same session.
Yeah.
We're not spreading them across. This is like the problem last year. I think it's very actually one of the fun things about this is I get to see what everybody is like talking about. So last
Yeah.
year, tons of AI and
Yep.
tons of Taylor Swift. Those were the two. I think we had maybe two complete sessions of Taylor Swift stuff. This year, there's one Taylor Swift paper on game theory, and
Okay.
then which I assume you also appreciate, and very little AI. I think we had one or two, maybe two AI papers. But
Okay. Yeah, that'll be
I'm
fun.
doing an experimental workshop next week. That's why we're recording now, and we will record one episode now. We will have to hurry on the next episode
As well. As well. That'll be okay. That'll be okay. So today, speaking of going abroad, which you'll be going, we were going to look a little bit into economics of studying abroad and a few of the different facets that, things could come up. There's a few different angles we could take with this. So you studied abroad yourself,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you led study
Man,
study
yes.
abroad.
Absolutely. And I'm trying to arrange another one. Absolutely. I tell students this all the time when they come and talk about, what sort of things should they do, get involved with. I've never had an internship, and I know, students talk about internships all the time. But I always tell them that one of the most sort of transformative college experiences I had was studying abroad. So my undergraduate university had a 5-week study abroad program.
Nice.
So it was a summer one, and we went to Puebla, Mexico, and stayed with a host family. And it was, we took two classes at a time, so we went to the local university. So what also made this really cool was there was like a group of us, maybe 15 of us, and then we also took basically the students at the home university could take classes with us, but we
Yeah.
were taking it at a local university, staying with a host family, and then every weekend we just traveled and went and did something in different places.
Very
Absolutely.
cool.
It was just so cool. Just it was very different. Well, actually, I'll say that my parents hated me going because given my age, I don't know, maybe you can line this up correctly. I'm
So it's
almost
between
40,
18 and 21.
right? So I was older, so I was like 21 or 22. So this would have been 2010-ish
Okay.
in central Mexico. Do you know what was going on in Mexico in the 2010s?
Was this cartel wars kind of stuff?
Massive, yes,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
massive amounts of. I think like 2 years later they shut the country down. Or like
Wow.
American universities were telling people not to go to Mexico, so they were terrified. But yeah, Pueblo was great. I absolutely loved
Yeah.
it. Changed my life.
Nice, nice. I did not study abroad as a student, but in 2012, we did a full semester abroad where I was the faculty member in London, and the whole family came over. Our kids were 10, 8, and 5 at the time. And that was amazing. I've done another 18-night trip that we've led. That was in the summer. And then I've been part of a number of other semesters where I've maybe been in charge for a week or two over the years, on top of doing some other work. So the first question, so you mentioned 5 weeks, you're in Pueblo. This isn't study abroad. I think point number one, we're saying this isn't a vacation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, what what makes it why is study abroad not like a vacation?
Man, it's just yeah, it's so incredibly different when you're. I would almost say it's sort of like it's sort of like when you go to college for the first time, right? We expect the students when they sort of first show up on campus, they struggle. They're in a new place. They're away from friends. They're away from family.
Yeah.
They're away from that sort of support system, and you grow up very, very fast your first year on campus. I grew up, I thought I was a grown adult because I went as part of my
Yeah.
master's program actually. It was in between the two, so it counted on both. I grew up so fast. I thought, oh, this will be easy. I'll study abroad. They'll all speak English. No,
Nope.
they do not. I knew some Spanish because I grew up in Texas, but just kind of being flung into a country with other people you don't know, right? There was 15
Mm,
other people, but you sort of, cluster and you're with these like three or four other people and you're all trying to figure it out together. You're like, how do we get on the bus? How do we get from
yeah.
here to the other part of town? And this was
Yep.
pre-cell phone Google Maps. So it
Sure.
was very important to ask people to, I have such fond like little memories of things like going to a restaurant and we were trying to explain to the waiter, we do not speak great Spanish, but we're going to practice. And the waiter
Mm,
going, I do not speak English. I will practice with you. And it was like this really cool moment.
yeah.
And yes, absolutely. With a family, you could go with your family. You could turn your phones off and try to figure it out yourself. But there's a comfort level when your parents are there that you sort of know they'll take care of things if things go wrong. And I just don't think you get that same sort of growing up maturity experience on a
Sure.
vacation as you would sort of being dropped into a country.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'd agree. I think a lot of number of things that we do. I don't know if you had this, but we tried to actually have a preparatory and reflection class tied to it. So you're spending some time thinking about how are the how will the culture be different than here? What are some of the things to think about? These are business students, so it's how is the business in this area? In how is the business in England different than in America? What are some of the business we would go at? Exchange rates, something that, if you've traveled a fair amount, you get used to, but it's something to think about, and it matters. It affects the
Mhm.
prices of things. It affects imports and exports. So I think a lot of structure, a lot of homework, a lot of assignments, whether they're you must write this out, a paper, or other types of assignments, often can get integrated within a study abroad experience as
Mhm.
well. So,
Yeah. No,
um,
so I guess you've led study abroads only to England or other places?
only well, one was England, one went to all four of the UK countries.
Okay. So
So
you've never led one to a different country or a country
uh,
with a different language.
correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, I've worked with the providers. Like I've gone to
Mhm.
meet with the folks who help us in Sorrento, Italy, and Barcelona, Spain.
Yeah.
But I haven't been the one in charge of the students there. I guess I've taken the students on a short trip to those countries, like 4 or 5 days,
Yeah.
but
Are
not the extended trips.
when you go, are you sort of are you kind of I guess how connected with you are how I don't know the right way to ask this question. How much time do you spend with the student versus how much time do you give the student to sort of be a student and experience themselves?
I mean, I think that's a great question. This for the semester abroad trips, certainly there's a lot more
Yeah.
where they get to explore on their own. But when we did the 18 night trip, this cross-cultural trip, myself and the other professor, I really pushed for this, and I think he agreed. Of course, by him agreeing, we get some time too. And it sounds self-serving, although when you're leading a bunch of kids, you do want to have your A game all the
It's
time.
exhausting.
Yeah, I mean, it's exhausting, and so I think it's important to have your A game. And we worked in several choose your own adventure or choose your own activity, and we gave them a list, and if they had something else they wanted to do, they could run it by us. And
Yeah.
those, I think, were more valuable than our group trips. So, for example, I don't think she'll mind me saying her name, but Courtney Conrad, who's alum and wrote some papers together, well known. Actually, a lot of the Econ Ed world knows Courtney. And she she had a Mini Cooper and loved Mini Coopers. And she wanted to go tour the Mini Cooper factory, which
Amazing.
was in Oxford. Now, actually touring the Mini Cooper factory to me isn't really a cross-cultural experience, but getting from London to Oxford
Hmm.
and figuring out how do I book the tickets and then how do I get home and how do I get from the train station to there, all of that is
Mhm.
a total and complete adventure. And so, there's so much learning there. And, you're in a foreign country and you're taking this isn't even on the normal metro line. You have to figure out how to get to the train station, get all of that. That's an incredible learning experience. So those types of things to me are valuable. We had a student who got lost and called me with her cell phone saying, I have no idea where I am, help. I'm like, okay. You're calling me, so I don't know where you are either. And it was like 3 blocks from where she had to go. But she'll go home and she'll realize I got lost in London and it was all okay.
Yeah.
That was a different student, but I like the time apart. So when you've done it, what's the split you've tried to do?
So when I led a study abroad, it was a week long study abroad. So we had these embedded spring break trips. And honestly, that's actually what I'm trying to plan for my next study abroad that I missed the deadline for. So it will not be spring 2026. It'll be 2027.
Spring 27.
So I don't pay attention to deadlines very well. Um, it's these sort of, I really like these kind of week long intensive study abroads for a variety of reasons, which I think we could talk about in a second, because obviously the financial component of a study abroad is one of the biggest hindrances to a study abroad. So whenever I did it at Penn State, these week-long study abroads, it was we basically spent all day with them. We would breakfast started at 7, and we'd leave the hotel at 8, get on a train, take a train somewhere, and then spend pretty much the whole day, and then we would come back usually around 4 to 6. Try to be closer to 4, not as much as 6. And then you're free for your own on the day. So we tried to treat it as like a sort of an 8 to 5. You're in school, and
Yeah,
then you have the evenings to yourself to do whatever you want. But they did not get a free day because it was really sort of a
sure.
we're
That's
just
pretty
in
intense.
Yeah, you're just in Switzerland for just those 6 days. So we
Yeah,
needed the contact hours to we needed to be with the students enough time so that they got the equivalent credit for it, which made it a little
yeah,
tough. But that's again, I think actually these different types changes how the type of person you become. Because one
yeah,
of the things I remember was interpersonal conflict because you are around the same people. And actually, this is probably true for most individuals. You don't spend that much time with other people except your family. And even then, you probably don't spend that much time with your family unless you're on vacation.
yeah, yeah,
And so these students are, they're paired up with somebody who they've only met a few times before.
yeah,
And then they suddenly have to sleep in the same room with them. They're eating breakfast with them, and they're riding on the train with them. And a couple of them did not get along with their roommates. And
yeah,
so we got to have some really fun conversations about that. And so I made that comment earlier about how exhausting it was. So if any of
yeah,
you are like, oh, they're all adults, it's not that bad. It
yeah,
is like having 15 children that are your own and just making sure that they don't die.
yeah.
And then just all the little, there's an issue. I think I had an issue every day.
Yeah, there's conflicts that happen. So the and that part can be exhausting. And I've had people, on the shorter trip, we had somebody in the hospital, and that was terrible.
Yeah.
Those things aren't fun. So the students do this, and you mentioned how you recommend it, and it was a
Yes.
transformative experience. So what does this do for a student if you're trying to so a student's trying to think, I'm not sure about whether
Mhm.
to do this or not, what's the case that you make
Yeah,
for
so I'll make two. So one of them, I'm thinking about all these students that I've led on previous trips, and I'm gonna pick on. And again, I don't think she's gonna say anything either because she told me how important it was to her. So her name was Brooke when I was at Penn State.
yeah, yeah,
So she was a transfer student. So she had come to Penn State in the fall. Didn't really, she was a junior, so she didn't really know anybody, right? It's her first time on campus. And like in the fall, she signs up for this spring break study abroad. You have to sign up like months in advance for these things.
yeah, yeah,
So she just went out on a limb and she goes, whatever. I don't know. She didn't have, I don't want to pick on her in the sense that she didn't have friends, but in the sense that like she didn't have spring break plans. She didn't know anybody.
yeah,
She was brand new on
she
campus,
was new, yeah,
brand new. And it was really fun because we took a charter bus from State College to Philadelphia. They're all silent. They're not talking to each other. Nobody knows, they have headphones on, all sorts of stuff. And then we take the charter bus back from Philadelphia to State College, and they won't shut up the entire 3.5 hours because they're all best friends. But one of the really cool things is that Brooke told me at graduation, she constantly thanked me for it, was just that like, she found her best friends on that trip, and just so you become really close and you either hate them
yeah,
or you become really close and you find people that are just like you. You sort of go through
yeah,
I'm gonna call it shared trauma. Like nothing that happened on this trip that was bad, right? But you have these sort of shared experiences, and so she
Sure.
credits that trip as just being sort of transformative in her last, because she was only on campus for 2 years, meeting people, learning who to take classes with, just really radically changed it. So
Yeah.
the pitch that I give to students is one, you will meet some people that could possibly become your absolute best friend, and you'll get to know them really quickly, uh,
Yeah.
and it might make lifelong friends. And then I usually my true pitch is because most students are like, I already have friends. I don't need to make friends. My normal pitch is that almost every job interview they do, the questions that they ask are situational questions. That's where
Yep.
they're trying to test people. And the situational experiences that you have on a college campus are just not the same. So one of the most common questions that interviewers always ask is, tell us about a time there was a conflict in a group. What did you do to do differently? And I pick on my students so much because I'm like, your answer is always the same. You worked on a group project and somebody wasn't doing what they were supposed to. I go, you want to
Yeah.
stand out? Talk about how you went on a study abroad program and you as a group had to determine where you're going to eat dinner, but you didn't speak the language and somebody else had a dietary problem and you learned to work through
Yeah.
a group of diverse people. And so I think it gives students the ability to talk about a lived experience, something they really care about when I'll say truthfully, maybe unfortunately, they don't generally care about what they're doing in class. They have a really hard time taking the stuff they do in class and communicating that to employers. But I don't
Mhm.
see the same problem when it comes to study abroad. They can very
Oh, yeah.
easily talk about their experiences.
Yeah. When I sell it, I don't sell the you might make friends part. I think that's a perfectly valid component. I will sell two different components of it. One is essentially the signal, which I think is kind of what you hit. It's not quite the signal, but I think going on a study abroad, it does send a signal to employers. Um, what do you need to send an effective signal, right?
I
You
had
need
this
something.
question for you as one of the questions I was going to ask you.
Oh, sorry. Well,
This is good.
right, the
No.
signal it can't be costless,
Hmm.
and it has to give some information about the person. That so nobody can just not just everybody can do it. I mean, I guess everybody maybe can, but for some people that's much
I can
more.
tell you they cannot.
Yeah,
I had
it's much more costly for some, right?
Yes,
Or
we had a student on that 1 week trip. Day two, she said she wanted to go home. She
Mhm.
said, "I don't want to do this," and we're
Yeah,
like, "It's only 7 days. Like, it's fine."
and there are some others who just won't go.
Yeah, so okay,
And
so well, let me frame my question then. If you saw a resume that was listing a study abroad program, what are the signals that you would pick up from that from a student?
so they're willing to try something a little bit different. They're willing to maybe get out of their comfort zone a little bit.
Does the
They're,
country matter?
um, I wouldn't think so.
Okay.
So I mean, if you're going over so to me, the two most common, like the places that would seem like the most like the US would probably be Canada and England. Well,
Hmm.
Canada, not that many people really go to study in Canada. So that actually poses somewhat of an interesting question. Like, really? So why Canada? Like, what prompted you to do this? And it makes you a little bit different. The UK, you're still crossing an ocean, right? You might want a story on why you did that. But so I don't know that it might make maybe it makes a little bit of a difference, but for the most part I think the signal of being abroad is enormous. So
So willing to try new things.
yeah, you're willing to try new things, you're willing to engage with people in a different culture
Mhm.
and communicate, and the business world's international and you never know when that will come up. As you said, those who have gone on the study abroads realize that sometimes you're in close proximity and you have tricky situations you have to deal with in the group. Now, we at our business school, we promote international internships, and so there we actually, when I'm talking to prospective students, I'm saying, you're instantly telling them that you know how to work with that you have worked with a boss who's very different from a different, completely different culture. You've had
Mhm.
coworkers who are from a different culture, that you are willing to try something that, quite frankly, sounds pretty scary, right? You're going to go to work at an office in England and with a bunch of coworkers who aren't from America, like that instantly jumps out. And we have had people who they've had their questions be centered around the internship or just the study abroad experience, and that's
Yeah.
that's a huge advantage because you're excited about it. So I think the signal is huge. And the second part though is the actual learning
Mhm.
that I mentioned those things, and part of the reason a signal and interesting is, gosh, if you're lost in London and you have to figure out how this completely different transportation system works, and there's a night where you took the wrong bus and you end up in a different neighborhood, right? Like, and you've got to get back. And it might sound dumb, but no, that's like life skills. That's problem solving. And if you can handle situations like that, you're learning. And when you get a stressful situation in the office, you're probably going to handle that a little bit better. It will likely make you a better employee, which will make you more likely to get those promotions and raises and the first job. It's not just that it's a signal. I think there's a skill part. One part that I wanted to ask is ask your thoughts, because I don't know the answer to this, is how much of the value is in the signal that it sends versus how much of the value would be in the skills that somebody gains. And I don't know. I know that there's a bit of both, but I don't know what the value on either of those to potential employers.
No, I think, but the problem is the signal gets you the interview, and then it's the skills that actually get you the job. And so I talk to the students about this a lot, especially students who I have a handful of students who get lots of interviews, but just can't seem to land a job. They're good students. I know them.
Hmm.
And then I sort of try to talk to them about what's going on. And then I kind of realize, I go, you don't really have a story to tell. You're a good student.
Yeah.
You have good grades. You take the right courses, but you don't get involved in econ club. You don't
Yeah.
study abroad. You don't participate in research. You don't know how to sell yourself once you're actually there. So I think
Yeah.
that if you didn't learn anything, right? Like let's say that you did study abroad in Canada, but it's because you live in Buffalo and you just like right, you stayed
Sure.
at home every night and you didn't really
Yep.
do anything. Or maybe your parents are maybe you're a dual citizen and you studied abroad from an I'm discounting those a little bit just in the sense that you could put that you studied abroad, but once you actually have the interview and the person is asking you questions about it,
Sure. Yep.
that's where you have to demonstrate that something happened to you that changed your life, you got some sort of skill, you're more open to something. And so I think that's the skill component. I think the students that do a good job of realizing it. I
Yeah.
think
Well, yeah, I
even,
agree.
yeah, like I think they realize immediately the benefits that they get because I have never heard of a study abroad program that goes perfectly. It might not, an individual person might not have issues, but that individual person is on a trip with somebody else who has had an issue, and they've had to be at least in that experience of, oh my God, we lost somebody. Right? Like they might not have been the lost one, but we've
Yeah.
lost someone, and we have to go out and find this person. So I think that's probably how I would separate the signal and the skill.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good separation. And I know that there's part on each. There's a little bit of weight on each of those, but
Yeah.
and I think pretty much everybody who does abroad. Okay, maybe if you're in Buffalo and you go to Niagara
I'm sitting there,
Fall
I'm sitting there
School
thinking,
of,
like, why are there no kid? I don't think I ever hear about a Canadian study abroad.
yeah, I don't think many do it. I don't know that it would be a bad thing. I don't know what the percentages might be, but
I'm Googling this right
yeah,
now
yeah,
because I don't think I have ever even heard of, yeah, international students can study abroad. Can
yeah.
America? Canada has been ranked as one of the best places to study abroad for two consecutive years.
Oh, well, yeah, and I mean they're actually getting a lot of students. They're a substitute for the U.S. as
Yeah.
well. So the Canada's have been doing well because of that. So
I guess part of the argument would be, at least from what I hear from students, right? They want a different experience, but not too different of an experience.
yeah,
So, right, we don't get a lot of students study abroad in Africa or in South America,
yep,
really. They'll go to Europe, they might go to Australia.
yeah,
They don't usually go to any of the other Asian countries. And even when it gets, I'll pick on the European version. That's probably where you get the levels of uncomfort. And so
yep,
they go, I want to be abroad, but not too abroad. I'm going to go to England. I want to be abroad, but not too abroad. Let me go to Germany. And then, Spain's a little bit
yeah.
harder. Greece is a little bit harder than that. But my guess is Canada is probably just too similar to the United
I would
States
I would imagine
citywide.
that's probably part of it. That's
Yeah.
probably part of why they don't. But no, I think even this the similarity, what we notice is a lot of students. I mean, we have students who go to London who literally never been on a plane before.
Hmm.
So for them,
That
this
always
is a pretty big
surprises me.
deal. This
Yeah.
is a huge deal, and they're going for 3.5 months. And
Yeah.
then from there, though, because when they're over there, they'll travel to do a long weekend in Switzerland or in Barcelona, where Rome, wherever they're going. And so they come back and they're like, I want to see the whole world. And
Yeah.
it's kind of cool how that transforms them. So
That happened on my Swiss trip. There was like two of the students who didn't even have passports.
yeah.
It's like, hold on, how did you? Those are the students that I am always just so impressed with because I'm sitting there going, like, you have literally never left this country, and your first trip is we're gonna just crash course into another country super
It's
fast.
impressive. Right. And like that's a great story on a in a job interview. Right. What a great story. So the final, like the third component I think wanted to, get your thoughts on and we'll chit chat about is just the whole economics, the economy around study abroad. And how does study abroad affect the US economy? How does it affect foreign economies?
I mean, I know the U.S. version. I think that's everything
Well,
that's in the
the
news.
US, I mean, I'll chime in first to say one
Yeah.
thing that's frustrating. You know, the I think the current administration I think is too negative on imports. Like imports are a bad thing, and I disagree with that assessment because if somebody, let's just take an extreme example, if some Middle Eastern countries wanted to give me the oil for free, give the U.S. the oil for free, so gas prices drop dramatically, oh, that sounds pretty awesome, right? But these happen in a lot of places, and yes, and nothing that extreme happens, but consumers are the only reason we're importing is consumers think this is better for them. They
Mhm.
like that. So I don't agree with the imports is bad and exports is necessarily as good. But if you agree with that, study abroad students coming to America is essentially an export.
Yeah.
We are exporting, we are getting money from the students coming and paying the institutions and renting in towns. And so making that more difficult is really costing this country billions of dollars. And that's frustrating. It's so inconsistent.
And
And that's
on top of it, you didn't even have to pay to educate that person K through 12 for them to come over here. An American
correct.
student, we are paying their their
Yeah.
public school education, and then also
Yeah.
having them in college. Like in the like it is almost a I don't want to treat them as though they're just like these like inanimate objects, right? But the U.S. invests almost no money in an international student in terms of healthcare costs, right? Like they have to bring their own insurance that usually is a massive insurance requirement. Like much, I
Yeah.
was surprised at like the insurance requirements where they're like, yeah, you need one where they'll fly you back if you die because we're not keeping you. Like they don't pay for any of the healthcare stuff. They're not paying for early childhood education. They're literally coming over here. These students are coming over here, giving us tons of money, living in towns, bringing in their family. They are bringing in money, and then 4 years later, most of them will go back.
Well,
Um,
and,
some
and
do
and
stay, but
quite frankly, the ones who stay, many who stay are providing enormous service to the
Mhm.
country because they're working in industry, they're high skilled and they're working
Yep.
in industries where they're helping us out enormously, right?
But I
But
also think it makes
even ignoring that,
makes our students better too.
oh yeah, yeah. So there's in terms of the economy, getting study abroad students is an enormous benefit to the places that can bring them in. I mean, it's massive for the country as a whole, in terms of thinking about an export. And it's weird because it's not like we're selling and they stay there, but they're paying all of the money and they're here.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not really for government coming in and saying let's figure out let's pay money to do that, but like strategically, our economy would do better if we had more study abroad students.
I remember I stayed with a family while I was there and it was so fascinating because yeah, so I was in Mexico, so I was in a low income I don't know, lower income. I mean, I think
Well,
I always
Mexico is
struggle with this
definitely lower income than the U.S.
in the
Yeah.
global scale, right? I think they're a middle income country. But I mean, it was there's clear poverty that was going on in that part of
Mhm.
Mexico. And I remember talking to I'm still actually Facebook friends with my host's sister.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and they were talking about how they were just so happy we were there because obviously the home family gets a cut of the fee. But because there was so much cartel violence happening at the time, they weren't
Mhm.
getting as many students who were coming. And
Sure.
that, reminded me a lot. We have this conversation about Airbnbs and stuff. I was essentially an income source for this family to
Yeah.
help offset the cost of living. They had a bedroom and they could host and they fed me, and that they weren't getting as many because of stuff going on, and that they were
Yeah.
really freaking out because where else are they going to get this large source of income? Um, And so it's in that same space where you think about all these
Mhm.
students we send overseas, they all of just the tourism related stuff, not like regular travel, but also educational components, train tickets, restaurants.
Yep, yep,
These students are regular, they're almost like long time visitors. Like they are,
yeah,
you're getting all those benefits of that we talk about visiting, but it's not a shifting. It's purely they're coming over.
yeah. So no, and I know. I mean, the study abroad industry. There's a conference. Boy, it probably just ended. NAFSA.
Okay.
I think it might be National Association for Study Abroad. I think that might be the acronym without looking it up. NAFSA. I believe it was just in San Diego, the conference. I've gone to it a few times when it's on the East Coast, and there will be many thousands of people whose careers are made by the study abroad, and that's the money that comes to the providers or from the universities that will come over to learn about the latest and greatest in study abroad because they'd like to have American or Canadian or students from all around the world come over. And then, but you're right, there's much bigger impact because of the rental market, the impact on restaurants. The students who are in London are out and about. They're hitting a pub from time to time and helping the local bar economy from where they're staying, of course.
Probably tipping way too much.
Probably tipping, yeah, if they're tipping on American standards, it's way more than what Europe is going
Oh, but
on.
even in a sense, I mean, it's a good investment for our country too, right? You have these students who are studying abroad, especially I'll say even the shorter trips where they might go over
Yep.
for 3 weeks. All of a sudden they're 20 years later and they have kids and they're thinking, where am I going to take my kids for vacation? And they go, oh my God, I had a great time when I studied abroad in this city. Let's go back
Yeah.
because they had such a good time. It really is an investment in those
Yeah.
particular students.
Yeah, I would love to see the US view the students as much more of a positive. Like I think many do, but there's there's things the government could do to try to make it more appealing for study abroad students, and I really wish we would do that.
I love my international students and my study abroad students. I am this sounds so weird to say. I'm always just like so proud that they like took that chance to do this sort of thing, as though like I didn't do the exact same thing. Like
Yeah,
but
but
I'm like I'm so proud of you for coming over here for just one semester
hey, but
to
it's
take
but
these
it's
courses. And I
still it's a
go
big deal.
right, and I sit there and I go, oh well, yeah, I guess I did the same thing. That's
Yeah,
lots of people
yeah,
study abroad. It is always sort of different, interesting to think about the differences between the two.
yeah.
Well,
I mean,
okay, Jeremiah, well,
oh, go ahead.
let me ask you one other question. So,
Sure.
because there's obviously a financial component to this for
Hmm.
a lot of people. So, what sort of advice would you give to let's say a first gen student who is
Yep.
nervous about fitting it in their program, paying for it? Like, what's
So
your normal
we
pitch?
Susquehanna has traditionally, everybody studied abroad.
Mhm.
It had been a requirement. Now there's a way to get the cross-cultural experience without it, but most do. And we have about 30% first gen students. So we do deal with this a lot. So the question often it comes down to income. Look, if you're not if the money is going to be a big issue, we're probably going to say you may not want to do London.
Mhm.
London's just expensive. It's one of the most expensive cities in the world. I love our London program. I think it's amazing, but it is an expensive city. Uh, I know there are plenty of places that you can study abroad for a semester where most colleges will say you pay our tuition and then you pay their room and board. And US room and board is really expensive. So instead of US room and board, you're paying room somewhere else and then you're paying for your own meals. You can actually do it cheaper. So cost wise, you can do this and it wouldn't be much of an expense. Now, the one thing you can't work at the same time generally because of visa laws. So that's a downside. If you work 10 hours a week normally, that's income you're going to be giving up, unfortunately.
Mhm.
But I don't think it's quite as expensive as people think because a lot of the costs, if you're willing to buy, be reasonably frugal. In London, the students in London, I tell them there are three things that make London stunningly expensive. One is um, the housing prices, and you're kind of stuck. Like they have to pay whatever the rental price is. But the other two is eating out at restaurants and drinking out at pubs. Those two are very controllable. If you decide not to spend much money on those two, groceries aren't more than the US. I mean, not noticeably, more. So we have one of the things I've loved about Susquehanna is that we have students who are Pell eligible. And because it's been a requirement, we make sure we figure out how you can make it work financially, and you will get this amazing experience. About 30% Pell eligible, 30% first gen, a fair amount of overlap between the two, but not 100% overlap. But
That was the same story we told the Swiss students. We said, look, go
yeah.
out to eat once, and that way you can say you did it.
Yep.
And then start planning your trips to the grocery store. Go get a sandwich from
Yep.
a convenience store. They have sandwiches and salads that are fresh, and they taste much better than a salad that you would probably get from your local grocery store in the United States.
Yep.
We tell them basically go out and eat once so that you can see what it's like, and then once you see the price, you're probably not going to do that again.
Yeah. And some of our students will do what's they don't tell us, this is not an endorsed, but if they're going to go to a pub or, or a nightclub, they will engage in what I think is colloquially termed as pre-gaming, and then not have as much at a bar. I mean, yeah, people figure out the money stuff pretty quickly. So it's an investment that I think pays off many times over. If somebody's considering and they're like, I really don't know about the money. I don't know of, well, I mean, of somebody who went home early, right? But the vast majority of people, they're not regretting their experience.
Correct. Yep. Yep.
Well, I honestly think it's a topic we could do a whole nother show on if we wanted, but in the interest of time, any closing thoughts before we get to our pop culture clips?
No, but I have a pop culture one for you.
Awesome.
Did I tell you what I want my study abroad to be? Since we're talking about it. Oh, okay. Well, let me tell you.
Let's do this, and then pop culture.
Yeah. Let me put it on. Let me put it on the air. That way, maybe this will be my commitment device. So I missed the deadline for a spring break 2026 study abroad. So, which means I will be spending the fall semester preparing for a spring 2027 study abroad. I got this from Mike Inns. When he was at Roanoke,
yeah, I know now, but the audience doesn't know. So
okay. When he was at Roanoke College, they had the same requirement that Susquehanna had. Maybe this is a more common liberal arts requirement than I thought. Every student had to do some sort of study abroad experience.
It's still pretty rare. Only a few.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so Roanoke College apparently did. And one of the challenges was that it also meant that departments needed to provide a study abroad experience. And they're a relatively small department. And their department had decided that they were going to do, it was still so cool. It was a 3-week Maymester. They did a 1-week cruise to Alaska. So they did 1 week in class, 1 week in Alaska, 1 week back home. That they were allowed to count that one as a study abroad. So I would say they had a loose definition of study abroad. I guess technically they did stop in Canada, but they were allowed to count that one. Or maybe they had a travel requirement or something like that. So it was really neat to hear about it, where basically Matt and I have talked about cruises, but instead of getting off and doing your normal port of call stuff, the students would get off the boat, they would do some educational activity, and then in the afternoon they would come back, and then they could do whatever they want in the afternoon. I would really like to do the exact same thing, and I am dreaming of taking students on a Caribbean cruise, and I want to teach a class called the Economics of the Caribbean. My idea for the class is it's very similar. So these 1-week cruises, basically you go to class for a day, 1 day each week for like an hour, sort of prepping students, giving them the background, and then really quick over spring break, and then they come back and do something. But basically talk about island economies, tourism, how they're different, monetary policy, just like little snippets of things like that.
Yep.
And then cruise. I found a cruise. So there is a week-long cruise that happens during spring break. I believe it goes out of Miami. I think it goes to Coco Cay, the private island for the Royal Caribbean.
Yeah.
It does not go to the Bahamas.
Nassau? Okay.
It doesn't go to Nassau. It just goes to their private island. And then it goes down to, I think, St. Thomas.
Okay.
And then it comes back to Puerto Rico and then back to Miami. So it's mostly an American one, but obviously there's the little jaunt in the Bahamas. But do the same thing. Get off the boat, go tour a rum factory. Get off the boat, learn about sustainability on a private island, or like the local straw market that happens.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I could come up with stuff. But then, one of our days at sea in the morning, maybe we can get the captain to talk about the cruise economy, things like that. So I think I can.
Yeah.
I think I can fill in the gaps. I just got to get approval for it, and I think the perk of it's relatively cheap. So
it is actually pretty cheap.
Cruises that's one of the big struggles. We didn't really get to talk about how much it actually costs. So a challenge, I mean, a challenge of like we have a study abroad trip going on right now in Europe. Those students, God bless them, they are paying 3 credits of Virginia Tech tuition
Yeah.
because it's technically a summer class. And then they're paying for 3 weeks worth of European expenses. It's pricey,
Yeah. Yeah.
including a flight and all that sort of stuff. One perk of this kind of quick trip, Virginia Tech has a tuition model that once you're full time, you don't pay any extra for additional credits. So
Okay.
since this happens over spring break, that extra three
They don't have to
credits,
pay for the credits.
they're not paying for the credits. They would
Yeah.
have to pay for a flight down to either Miami or Orlando, which is
Yep.
fairly cheap for most cities.
Yep.
And then it's still early in the cruise season. We're kind of in the kind of late March, I think, is when it starts getting expensive.
Yep.
Early March, I think it was still like $100 a night, $150. It was on the cheaper side. I want to say it was like 600, $700.
Oh, yeah. That's a great deal.
So I think it would be about $1,000 total to fly
Yeah.
down there, stay, take the cruise, and then come back.
Sounds pretty awesome. Yeah. I do not think you'll have trouble filling that class. So that sounds awesome.
Some of the students have already heard about it. They know
Yeah.
I'm scheming on it, and they're just like, "When are you going to do this? Is this still happening?" And
That's
I will
awesome.
have to disappoint them to let them know it will not be next year.
March of 27.
Well, and I was telling somebody else about this. They're like, "You want to take students on a cruise? Won't that be like
Yeah.
that'd be a little crazy?" I go, "These are the nerdy ones. They're not gonna."
We should have done this on a cruise ship. That would have been like, and then that would have been the way to do
Maybe
it.
that's
Bring the
maybe we'll
captain
do.
on.
Maybe when I go on this trip, maybe I can log in and you can meet some of the
That
students
would
who
be
are
pretty awesome, actually.
actively
That'd
on
be
the
pretty
cruise.
awesome. So, what's your pop culture?
I got one for you. Have you ever seen the movie Euro Trip?
No.
It's one of my favorite. It's not my favorite. I shouldn't have said it's my favorite movie. It's a good clip for this. So it is a group of people who are backpacking in Europe, and they're backpacking in, I believe, Eastern Europe. And so they are down to like their final set of change and money, and they're like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do?" And they're like pulling their money together, and they have like I actually have it written in my description, $1.83, and they're going,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, we're loaded!" And it shows them like having just an amazing sort of experience, lavish dinners, checking into like a 5-star resort. And so it's a really cool. That's always one of my favorite things about study abroad is talking about exchange rates, and
Yeah.
especially I think it's probably most dangerous when the country has an exchange rate that is very similar, but just a little bit under it, to where they don't realize. So like they'll see things where they'll say 10, actually I'll pick on the pounds. I think the pounds are really close to this.
Yeah.
So something right now that it would be listed as 10 pounds is $13. So it is 30% more,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's just close enough that when you see prices, you're like, "Oh, it's only 10 or 20 pounds. That's not a big deal." And then realizing that everything you're buying is 30% more expensive.
30% more.
And then when
Yeah.
you come back, you go, "How did I spend so much money?" And it's because everything
That is how. That is
that's how everything is 30% more. And you lied and you told yourself
Yeah.
that 10 pounds was equal to $10.
Yeah. I'll go a different vein from this and go to a more current show that I just saw. My wife and I just watched. Say we binged it is a little bit incorrect, but probably over the course of about 2 weeks, we watched season 1 of Landman with
Okay.
Billy Bob Thornton, and Demi Moore is in it, and the guy from Mad Men is in it. It's actually got a pretty stacked cast, and it's about Texas oil drilling. It's up your alley.
That's a Billy Bob Thornton movie show, it
It's
sounds like.
but it's fascinating, and there are several times where they talk about the oil economy or oil's importance to the economy. That is really fascinating, and quite frankly, the way they're saying it is not the types of things you typically would hear in most popular television shows.
Yeah.
So I haven't recorded the clip yet, but I plan to pretty soon, and I'll put it on Critical Commons, and of course, feel free to put it on Econ Media Library. It's just a pretty fascinating. We found it as an interesting show. I actually don't know how real or not real the oil economy is that they're depicting. If anybody really knows their oil economies, and has seen the show, I'd love to know whether what we saw was semi-realistic or not. I'm guessing they really don't deal with the Mexican drug cartels that much, and that was fictionalized. But it was a fun show. It was a fun show. So
Interesting.
cool. Well, how was the non-alcoholic beer?
I mean, I finished this minutes ago. This is empty.
Yeah.
I keep
Mine-
picking it up thinking there's more in there, and then I realize there's not.
Yeah, mine's gone too. Founders Mortal Bloom is a winner for anybody who's looking for that. But well, enjoy the trip over across the pond,
Excited.
and we'll chat again in a couple of weeks. Thank you to everybody for listening. Please, once again, Reviews are appreciated. 5-star ratings are appreciated, and we love your comments and suggestions. Brian gave us one again for this week, which we didn't get to. We'll try to maybe get to that soon on Broadway and the Rush lines. But well, until next time.
Cheers, Matt.
Cheers.